When the North Sea has a wild day, this town is prone to flooding. It was at its worst when once a European windstorm sent a vicious squall to Thurrock. 50 years on, political windstorms now come fairly frequently from the continent. The sitting Tory MP here won it at the last election by 92 votes, but within the constituency, over 3,000 went to another party, UKIP. Today, UKIP polled third in the national opinion polls. It's concerning for the Lib Dems, but it's also concerning for Conservatives. They think that they are leeching support because their party's not tough enough on Europe and immigration and a host of other issues. The problem for some is so deep that they could actually lose a majority at the next election. One worrying fact for the Conservatives is that in the 2010 election, when UKIP won 3% of the vote, one-third of what they polled today, there were 21 constituencies where their vote was larger than the amount by which the Tories lost. There are at least 6 Conservatives believe to be clear-cut losses caused by UKIP.
Well, I certainly don't think that the Conservative Party can take its own supporters for granted, and clearly the polls are showing that there has been some movement from the Conservative Party to UKIP, possibly from Labour to UKIP as well. Now, I think that if the Conservative Party has a robust Eurosceptic policy in the future, hopefully in the near future, that we will be able to attract back those Conservative voters that have gone to UKIP, but also those people that have found a home in UKIP over the last few years.
UKIP leader Nigel Farage has made it his aim to replace the Lib Dems as the third party in British politics. In order to do so, policies on high-speed rail are nestled alongside more familiar ditties on Europe, immigration and human rights. It should put a seat like Thurrock within UKIP's sights. One political operation working out of the back of a local pub has a different perspective.
If you were consulting on this, I think people would feel a lot more respect, I think, for the politicians. Think, yeah, they've actually listened to what I've had to say.
The People's Pledge are campaigning for a referendum on our relationship with Europe. They think that as things stand, elected politicians are ignoring popular opinion. And UKIP is successfully capitalising on this.
The People's Pledge, the aim is to get a majority, a pro-referendum majority of MPs elected at the next election. And you need members of Parliament to get a referendum, to get the Referendum Act. So our aim, and what we're doing here in Thurrock and then going nationwide, is to start that process. But you do need members of Parliament in order to progress that.
Look, the threat to Cameron by UKIP could be half a dozen seats next general election, but a much bigger threat.
But what's your proof for that?
On the ground here in Thurrock. UKIP polled 3,500 and we polled over 13,000, nearly 4 times as much. Now, you know, any UKIP threat to Cameron, for me, is a temporary one. It might cost them half a dozen seats at the next general election. The real threat to Cameron is if the Labour Party comes out in favour of a referendum, then he's going to lose another general election, and not this time in coalition, but going into opposition.
This experience in Thurrock suggests that not all seats with bulky UKIP votes would necessarily go to the Tories, but as likely to any political party. But the clamour within the Conservatives is strong, and they want the fight back to begin now.
Sooner or later, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, the Conservative Party will have to address the European question. Most people alive today have never had a say on the European question. We will have to have that referendum. When that happens, when that commitment comes forward, I think we'll be able to attract back those Conservative members that have gone to UKIP and those UKIP members that have perhaps not been part of the Conservative family for many years.
There is real anxiety among Conservative MPs over this issue. They say that in the forthcoming boundary reviews, if MPs lose their seats, then they may as well defect to UKIP, go down in a ball of flames, in the words of one MP we've spoken to. Downing Street, however, does not sympathise. They point out 2 things. Firstly, they say that often people who vote UKIP for, in their words, incoherent reasons. And if they chase those voters, they too would end up looking incoherent. And then secondly, they reiterate, the key for them to the majority of 2015 lies in winning over Labour and Lib Dem swing voters, not in winning over UKIP.
Hello, how are you, madam? Hello.
UKIP is not to be dismissed lightly. After all, last year they came second, albeit distantly, to Labour's win in Barnsley's by-election.
We have a problem convincing people that we are the most Eurosceptic government ever, because Europe is not a particularly important national issue. If you look at recent polling, only 5% of people said our relationship with the EU was the most important thing on their mind. The most important things are jobs, the economy, the health service and immigration. So I think we're having almost too much of a focus on the European issue and not enough focus on some of the big picture issues.
By gaining just 100 votes, UKIP could deny the Tories Thurrock at the next election. But to fulfil its own ambitions of replacing the Liberal Democrats as the third main party, it needs to start bagging its own seats, not depriving others of theirs.